breaking this hour. Hong Kong authorities have confirmed that the deadly high-rise fire, which claimed the lives of at least 128 people, began on protective netting on the lower floors and spread rapidly through flammable styrofoam boards and bamboo scaffolding. Now, Security Chief Chris Tang has stated that the fire quickly ascended, fueled by burning debris. As of now, 8 individuals have been arrested, including 2 directors from Willpower Architects and 3 senior staff members from Prestige Construction and Engineering. Officials also revealed that the fire alarms were malfunctioning during the incident and promised strict enforcement action. In response to the tragedy, Chinese President Xi Jinping and Hong Kong's Chief Executive John Lee have expressed their condolences, while a full criminal investigation is currently underway. Let's listen in first to Hong Kong's Secretary and Director of Fire.
最初起火嘅位置係宏昌角低層外邊嘅嗰啲嘅圍網，其後咧係由於燃燒咗嗰啲發泡膠板，火勢迅速咧係向上蔓延。 伸延到去多個嘅樓層，並喺短時間內咧係波及咗宏福苑其他6座嘅樓宇。大火咧係引燃咗貼喺嗰啲窗門上邊嘅發泡膠板，令到玻璃爆破，令到火勢咧係急速增強，並且迅速蔓延到咧入到室內。要強調，如果用直升機喺呢個火警裏邊掟水彈。 如果喺個樓宇嘅上空投擲水彈，啲水係唔會係不會係會落入個火場裏邊，只會淋咗去一個大廈。
Joining us now is my colleague Marisha Barve. Marisha, what's the latest that you're picking up?
Well, yes, Kriti. To give you and our viewers more context about the situation, the Wang Fu Court nearly houses around 4,800 residents who are mainly elderly. Now, out of the 8 towers, several are home to senior citizens and they rely on caregivers. Now, when you look at the whole scenario in itself, the cost of their lives was only because of limited mobility, which made the escape nearly impossible. Now, officials reveal that fire alarms were malfunctioning, but the problem goes deeper. When you look at the construction of the building and the project in itself, a very key note that needs to be taken mention of is styrofoam. Now, it is a petroleum-based plastic made from polystyrene, and it's lightweight, full of air pockets, and it is known to ignite at relatively low temperatures. When it burns, it produces thick smoke. In many parts of the world, in fact, the use of styrofoam, and especially notably in the EU, is banned in food packaging. And here, ironically, in a densely populated residential area, construction has been made with styrofoam. Many of the windows were blocked, which made escape nearly impossible, which caused the tragedy in itself. Now, many officials have been arrested under the charges of manslaughter. We are awaiting trial and we are waiting to see how this tragedy transcends and unfolds. And we are genuinely, it's a genuinely unfortunate incident that has transpired, and yes, a lot of condolences to the Wang Fu Court incident that has taken place.
Well, absolutely. For now, thank you, Marisha, for joining us and sharing that with us. And viewers, let's now move on. Indonesia is ramping up its emergency response as devastating floods and landslides continue to hit the island of Sumatra. The country's disaster management agency says aircraft are now being deployed to deliver food and other essential supplies. Let's listen in.
Prioritas pertama, pemulihan akses jalur darat, baik yang saat ini tertimbun longsoran maupun jembatan putus. Kementerian PU sudah mensiagakan alat berat di titik-titik yang sudah dipetakan. Kita harapkan kondisi cuaca mulai membaik hari ini sehingga operasi pemulihan atau pembukaan akses jalan bisa berlangsung optimal. Yang kedua, penyaluran dukungan logistik permakanan dan non-permakanan ke masyarakat akan kita optimalkan melalui jalur udara dengan menggunakan 1 pesawat dan 1 heli. Tentu saja ini jika dibutuhkan, Kepala BNPB tadi sudah menyatakan akan menggeser beberapa unit heli lainnya dan pesawat karavan agar benar-benar bisa optimal nantinya dalam mendistribusikan logistik kepada masyarakat terdampak. Ketiga, pemulihan akses komunikasi dan listrik. Kami harapkan PLN dan pengelola jaringan telekomunikasi bisa segera memulihkan akses komunikasi GSM di lokasi terdampak sehingga kebutuhan masyarakat akan saluran komunikasi yang bisa menjangkau kerabat di daerah terdampak bisa benar-benar kita pulihkan dalam 1-2 hari ini.
And in Aceh province, streets in Pidijaya are coated in thick mud. Homes and businesses have suffered widespread damage and many vehicles remain completely submerged. Officials say teams are working to reach isolated areas as conditions on the ground continue to hamper search efforts. And moving on, the International Criminal Court has rejected a request by former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte to be released from detention ahead of his trial on crimes against humanity. Duterte faces charges related to his controversial war on drugs, which resulted in numerous deaths across the Philippines. Now, families of some of the victims followed the hearing via video link and erupted in cheers and applause when the court announced its verdict. Let's listen into what some of them had to say.
Nung Friday pa lang na nag-meeting tayo, hindi na ako nakatulog. Dahil talagang pinagdadasal ko na sa atin papanig ang hustisya. At sa wakas, natupad naman. At pinanalangin ko talaga na sana ito yung magandang regalo dahil magbe-birthday nga si Daboy, 33 si Daboy bukas.
Napakahalaga po sa amin ng gabing ito at we appreciate the support of the judges na i-reject yung appeal ni Duterte dahil wala naman talagang grounds para palayain siya. Hindi siya karapat-dapat na makalaya.
Parang, kumbaga, nabunutan kami ng isang tinik sa aming dibdib. Pero siyempre, mahaba pa rin talaga yung laban. Pero at least, di ba, nagkaroon na kami ng one po.
And moving on, Ukrainian President Zelensky has announced that Ukrainian and US delegation will meet this week to discuss a formula for peace and security guarantees for Kyiv based on talks held in Geneva. In this nightly video address, Zelensky said that there will be additional discussions next week, including more dialogue. However, he did not provide specific details about the formula or the outcomes of these talks. The announcement comes as both countries look to strengthen their efforts to address the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Listen in.
Наша команда разом з американськими представниками вже на цьому тижні, наприкінці тижня, продовжить наближати пункти, які є у нас за результатами Женеви, до такої форми, яка виведе на дорогу до миру і гарантій безпеки. Буде зустріч делегацій. Українська делегація буде добре підготовлена та налаштована на предметну роботу. Сьогодні відбулася важлива зустріч санкційних координаторів європейських держав. І якщо Путін не хоче зупинятись, санкції не будуть зупинятись. Пріоритети зрозумілі – бити по російській нафті, по російській технологічній складовій, по їхнім фінансам, по їхнім активам, які працюють на російську воєнну машину. Світ нам допомагатиме. Я дякую кожному, хто тисне зараз на агресора, хто захищає Україну від тиску. Ми це дуже цінуємо і бачимо кожне таке зусилля. Наступного тижня будуть важливі перемовини не тільки у нашої делегації, а й у мене. І ми готуємо твердий ґрунт для таких перемовин. Україна стоятиме на ногах міцно. Завжди стоятиме. Я дякую всім, хто нам допомагає. Я дякую кожному, хто захищає Україну як себе особисто.
Joining us now is my colleague Marsha Barre. Marsha, what more can you tell us on this?
Well, yes, Kriti. To dissect the situation for you and the viewers, let's dissect it into Russia's front and Ukraine's front. Now, President Putin has said that the US plan to end the war in Ukraine could form a basis of the agreement, but he constantly reiterated that Russia may seize more territory if Ukraine does not back up or withdraw. Now, Putin confirmed that the US delegation, which is led by the Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, is expected to meet in Moscow early next week for serious discussions. Now, what that could actually transcend into, according to Putin, is that the war will only end if Ukrainian troops leave the territories that Russia has occupied. Otherwise, Russia will use military force, which is that they will advance into Ukraine with more force. Now, in all of this, what is Ukraine's response? President Zelensky, on the other hand, has said that the Ukraine's delegation will meet US officials for further discussions to end the war and to discuss points from Geneva. Now, this is an agreement that has been going on. The ceasefire agreement, which is an elaborate 28-point agreement, clearly states many such points which were spoken in Geneva. Now, to mention the territorial context of it all, Russia occupies roughly 20% of Ukraine's territory, but Kyiv and European allies view territorial concessions as a red line. That is, that they will not stand by Russia if territorial concessions are to be made. The next steps that we would await is that Putin awaits Witkoff's visit to discuss the revised plan, but stressed that it is too early to mention if it's an agreement or if it's not. So yes, we are eagerly waiting. If the ceasefire would really would instate in the first place, and if it would stay the same without any violations or breach in the ceasefire agreement. So yes, Kriti, that for you is what's happening on both Ukraine and Russia's front.
All right, thank you, Marsha, for joining us and sharing that input with us from the newsroom. And with that, viewers, let's move on now. Several Italian unions in the health, education and transport sectors have launched a general strike in response to the budget under Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's hard-right government. Hardline union USB, which is leading the action, argues that wages in Italy are among the lowest in Europe and demands better pay for workers. Students have also joined the strike protesting the budget cuts. They gathered outside Rome's parliament, chanting for more investment in education, holding signs that read "money for schools, not wars." They emphasize their demands for a stronger focus on public services over military service. And now moving on to news from Turkey, where Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan met with his German counterpart Johann Wadephul in Berlin on November 28 to discuss bilateral relations, regional conflicts, and Turkey's EU membership process. The talks focused on strengthening economic cooperation, including expanding trade ties and supporting Turkey's participation in the same mechanism. Germany also confirmed progress on the sale of Eurofighter jets, enhancing military and security cooperation. Fidan and Wadephul addressed the war in Ukraine, conflicts in the Middle East, and long-standing bilateral relations. Germany reiterated its support for Turkey's European Union integration, while both countries emphasized deepening economic and security collaboration. Up next, US President Donald Trump says that the US will very soon start taking to stop suspected Venezuelan drug traffickers on land. The Trump administration has been watching Venezuela-related options to combat what it has portrayed as President Nicolas Maduro's role in supplying illegal drugs that may have killed Americans. US forces in the region so far have focused on counter-narcotics operations, even though the assembled firepower far outweighs anything needed for them. US troops have carried out at least 21 strikes on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean and Pacific since September, killing at least 83 people. Let's listen into Trump.
been working to deter Venezuelan drug traffickers, of which there are many. Of course, there aren't too many coming in by sea anymore, if you probably noticed that. From sending their poisons into the United States, where they kill hundreds of thousands of people a year. But we're going to take care of that situation. We're already doing a lot. We've almost stopped. It's about 85% stopped by sea. You probably noticed that. People aren't wanting to be delivering by sea. And we'll be starting to stop them by land also. The land is easier, but that's going to start very soon. We warn them, stop sending poison to our country.
Moving on, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has said that the Trump administration is not worthy of cooperation with the Islamic Republic. Speaking on a state-designated day honoring the besieged paramilitary force, Khamenei rejected claims that Iran had contacted Trump or Washington, calling such rumors a pure lie. Khamenei also praised Iran's public unity during the 12-day war with Israel in June despite internal differences. He asserted that Israel and the US had failed to achieve any objectives in the conflict. Khamenei also dismissed claims by former President Trump that US strikes had destroyed Iran's nuclear program, insisting the damage was minimal. Listen in.
شایعاتی درست میکنن که ایران، دولت ایران به واسطه فلان کشور پیغام فرستاده به آمریکا. دروغ محض که چنین چیزی حتما وجود نداشت. یه چنین دولتی در خور نیست که کسی دولتی مثل جمهوری اسلامی به دنبال ارتباط با او و همکاری با او.
And moving on, viewers, to news from the United Nations. Now, UN Rights Office spokesman Jeremy Lawrence said the incident reflects a pattern of rising Palestinian deaths in the West Bank without accountability, urging an independent investigation. Listen in.
Brazen killing by Israeli border police yesterday of 2 Palestinian men in Jenin in the occupied West Bank in yet another apparent summary execution. Killings of Palestinians by Israeli security forces and settlers in the occupied West Bank have been surging without any accountability, even in the rare case when investigations are announced. Impunity for Israel security forces' unlawful use of force and ever-growing Israeli settler violence must end. The High Commissioner urges an independent, prompt and effective investigations into the killings of Palestinians, and those responsible for violations must be held to account.
The Palestinian Authority identified the victims as Yusuf Ali al-Sassa and Ali Muntasir Billah Mahmoud Abdullah, calling the killings a war crime. Israeli forces said they were targeting men involved in attacks, while far-right Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir defended the shootings. Violence in the West Bank has escalated sharply since the start of the Gaza war, with more than 1,000 Palestinians, including 223 children, killed by Israeli forces or settlers, according to the United Nations. Now, Israeli figures say that at least 44 Israelis have been killed in related attacks and operations. Moving on, Syrians gathered in the numbers to mark the first anniversary of a military campaign that led to the ouster of President Bashar al-Assad. The offensive, which lasted just 11 days, saw rebel forces sweep through the country, taking the capital and causing Assad to flee. Demonstrators expressed a sense of freedom, celebrating the end of a decade-long regime, as many feel the tide has shifted in their favor. The lightning advance of rebel forces and troops has remained a significant moment in Syria's struggle, with the anniversary evoking both a sense of victory and hope among the people. Moving on, Peru's judiciary has sentenced former President Pedro Castillo to 11.5 years in prison. The verdict was issued on Thursday and relates to charges of rebellion and conspiracy from 22 years ago, late to 2022. Let's listen in to Norma, Peru's Supreme Court Justice, had to say.
Pedro Castillo Terrones como coautor del delito contra los poderes del Estado y el orden constitucional en la modalidad de conspiración para una rebelión previsto en el artículo 349 del Código Penal en agravio del Estado, y como tal se le impone al sentenciado 11 años, 5 meses y 15 días de pena privativa de libertad de carácter efectivo, que descontada la carcelería que viene sufriendo en mérito a su detención desde el 7 de diciembre de 2022, vencerá el 21 de mayo del 2030.
And Castillo had attempted to dissolve Congress and assume expanded powers, but the move failed and he was removed from office in December 2022. He had been detained throughout the trial as the case progressed. The attempted power shift set off weeks of unrest. Protests erupted across the country against the new government and resulted in dozens of deaths, mostly in regions where Castillo enjoyed stronger support. Last week, during his final defense statement, Castillo dismissed the charges against him. He argued that his attempt to dissolve the Congress did not have the backing of security forces, and his announcement had no practical impact. And moving on, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan praised Pope Leo's position on the Palestinian issue following a meeting in Ankara. Erdogan condemned the Pope and his predecessor for their support of Palestine and called his first overseas visit as Catholic leader a hopeful step for humanity in these times of tension. Erdogan also highlighted the Pope's calls for peace and diplomacy over the Ukraine war, noting their significance. Turkey has been a strong critic of Israel's action in Gaza, and Erdogan has expressed appreciation for the Pope's message on family values. Listen in to what the Turkish president had to say.
Misafirimizin ziyareti bölgesel ve küresel olaylar bağlamında son derece kritik bir zamana tekabül ediyor. İnsanlığın yön arayışının hızlandığı, küresel düzeyde belirsizliklerin arttığı, Asya'dan Afrika'ya, Latin Amerika'dan Doğu Avrupa'ya gerilimlerin tırmandığı bir dönemde gerçekleşen ziyaretin tüm insanlık için hayırlara vesile olmasını ümit ve arzu ediyorum. Saygıdeğer misafirimiz ve seleflerinin özellikle Filistin meselesine yönelik dirayetli duruşlarını daima takdirle karşıladığımızın bilinmesini isterim.
And with that, it's a wrap on the newsroom, but keep watching NewsX World for more breaking news updates.